soundtrack.
Welcome back, everybody, to Selling the Soundtrack, your go-to pod for everything music sync licensing. If you're already making bangers, your music could be making you bank. The AR/VR world is such an up-and-coming industry, and it's going to have an impact on the way that we make music, the way we collaborate, the way we network with others in the industry. And today we've got a real leader in the AR/VR space, Jennifer Richey. She's done reality tech projects related to music, like working with Maroon 5 and Live Nation, and she's also worked with a ton of big brands like Audible, Meta, Toyota, Heinz, and so many others. We're going to chat about what the future of the sync licensing music industry could look like once AR/VR tech has gone mainstream. And that's something that I'm personally very excited about. Thanks for being here, Jen.
Yeah, super excited to be here, Tiff.
So, can you share with us your journey and how you got into AR/VR?
Yeah, so I was actually on my way to becoming an attorney at school when I met my husband skydiving at a drop zone down in California. And
What?
I ended up leaving college, transferring colleges up to Washington State and was finishing up here. And then we started a company together that was in software dev for PCs. And so I ran kind of the financials and the behind the scenes of it. That company got acquired in 2007, and we were with a gaming company for 2 years before we started Gravity Jack. And then I got more into the front lines of sales and working with the clients and projects and things like that through that. So it was an evolution into the space.
With the gaming company you were doing before, was it related to AR/VR or just completely different?
No, it was a PC gaming company. So we actually wrote the tech for our software company, Meta Software. Prior to that, the gaming company hired us to dev it out, and then basically we did such a good job that they acquired the whole company. And so then we
Whoa.
came on board and we're working with the gaming company. It was a PC gaming company though, so a lot different than AR/VR really, because it's not on mobile or headsets or anything like that.
Mhm.
But a little forte into, just different tech kind of world than some of the software we were creating beforehand.
With AR/VR, musicians could have the ability to co-write with other producers and musicians in the same room wearing a headset.
Hmm.
Um, do you think the ability to do this is not far away, or do you know if this like exists already, or like to me that's one of the most exciting things of when I think about AR/VR.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I don't know if anything exists directly off of it. Mostly because
Mhm.
it's okay, what are you going to see when you're in the VR environment, right? Are you going to be like like an avatar, and I'm going to be an avatar, and we look at each other, and really shared experiences are really just the last year and a half or so coming out, and or even
Mhm.
kind of that's the whole metaverse deal, right? Is giving people the place to do things like that. And then,
Mm.
you know, you're going to be in there again. What kind of scenery are you going to be? What kind of environment? Why do some people like that better than doing, a Zoom call kind of scenario like this and connectivity and stuff?
Mhm.
Do I think it's going to go there? 100%. I'm just not
Mhm.
sure what platforms are out there that people are like, yeah, let's do it here.
And like it would be easy when people like have access in their homes so that like,
Yeah.
you're in your like studio or office, you put it in the other person's in their studio or office and like
Yeah.
maybe it's a shared studio or
Hmm.
like I didn't even think about the fact that like you wouldn't look like yourself, like it would be avatars at this point.
Yeah, at this point it would be. And it could be an avatar that looks ish like you, but there still be a
Mhm.
little bit of disconnect from that front. There is
Mhm.
also, depending on what you're doing in the studio, as long as if you're needing your hands for something, there's, Quest's Meta device or Meta's Quest device, excuse me, has just gotten a
Mhm.
lot better at gesture rec. That means looking down and actually seeing my hands. So now
Oh.
before it would kind of just look more like controllers, and now it's actually recognizing your fingers. Like if I hold my hand up like this, you'll see my hand like this. We did a game for Meta directly, and we were doing testing. And so I actually had like my daughter and her friend were all in the house, and we were in a shared room in the game. And I couldn't tell which
Mhm.
avatar was her. And I'm like, okay, I'm throwing up I love yous. And she could see my avatar doing this and I didn't have gloves or anything on. It's just recognizing. So from a studio perspective, I think that'll be easier too. where it feels a little more
Okay.
natural, than a little
Yeah.
detached.
On the topic of like with fingers too, like I'm wondering how it would work when it comes to like creating AR VR instruments where you need your fingers to play, because right now, like I don't know, have you heard of Virtuoso? It's like I read a blog post about them, but it was pretty much like an AR VR virtual instruments company where like you have these handsets and you can kind of like tap when you want to play something. So drums are really easy because you hold these things and like
Totally.
obviously you see them
Yeah.
around you, and like same thing with like synths and piano things. It's kind of like you tap on
Yeah,
this
I could see
on
that
these
being
like,
easier.
yeah, it doesn't even look like an instrument. Some of them are just like blocks that you hit and they're notes. But then I'm
Yeah.
wondering how would it work for like stringed instruments where it's like you need like placement
Yeah.
and touch and feeling. Like is it all like I have so many questions. It's like, are virtual instruments gonna change the way we play because it'll be more accessible to just like get sounds from hitting things, or would it be possible to like have feeling and be able to like play?
Two things. I think one, it could be an instrument that the device looks down and recognizes and sees. That could be one.
Oh,
Because presently,
mhm.
haptic feedback. So I actually got to demo, it's called haptics, and it's a glove that you can put on and it gives feedback in the VR space. So, say I go to grab a can in VR, like there's no can here, but with the gloves on, it knows there's a can. Like now I'm in VR, the can is here. This isn't real, but the gloves programmatically push, and you wear this backpack. It's huge, like big old backpack with this air compressor hose attached to it, and that
Mhm.
it blows air into the gloves, and that's what's giving the tactile feedback, so it feels like you're grabbing something. But the fine
Mhm.
motor skills were not great at all. Like it's not ready for something like playing an instrument, even picking up a pen. Like when you had the pen in your hand, you were kind of going, like it was really difficult to just pick the pen up and write with it. Very difficult. So they were talking about using the haptics gloves for simulation and training in like with the government, military, like mil ops, but you wouldn't even be able to like have the dexterity to pull the trigger. You really
Yeah.
wouldn't, because it was so, picking up a can, cool. Like opening a door, cool. Like the handle would go and it felt like you were
Well,
holding a handle.
yeah.
But anything else that with like some fine motor skills, very, very difficult for now. So with an instrument, I couldn't imagine. And they were like 500 grand a piece. So yeah, like
Yeah.
we're not quite there yet.
Do you think it'll be like decades or like it, because we if we already have hands, I feel like that's close-ish.
It's the hands meeting the instrument part now. That
Yeah.
plus I just that this would go back. I'd flip the question back to you, back to producers and musicians, and do you want to replace real instruments with digital versions? It's an interesting question.
That's such an interesting question because, like, for me, it almost makes it seem like music's just gonna become more accessible for everybody. Like, now
That's
you
true.
don't have to study
Bye.
piano for 10 years to become super proficient at playing whatever it is you wanna play, while, like,
Yeah.
now you can kind of it's not cheating your way, it's just new instruments, new ways to
Yeah,
create sounds.
that's true.
So,
So it'll be having to break that mental barrier for the music industry. And thinking of them, I love that wording. Like these are new instruments. These particular, like the digital ones, don't be as attached to. Like,
yeah.
yeah,
Totally. It's a whole new way to just view music. And it's also like, yeah, it's exciting to me to be like, okay, we're not stuck to these physical instruments anymore. Like,
yeah.
even just the stuff looking at like that Virtuoso company, like they look like cubic blocks that you're like hitting, but they make sound. So it's like,
Wow,
there's
literally a
new
new
ways.
instrument.
I think it's exciting. We still have access to our instruments, but like now it's like a whole new world of things we can
Hmm.
play.
Yeah.
How do you think AR, VR changes fan engagements with musicians?
Oh, I think we're just getting to tap the surface of what that looks like, to be honest. I think that
Mm-hmm.
now that the technologies are becoming, I don't want to say fully ubiquitous, but a lot of people have VR headsets in their homes. Everybody has a phone in the palm of their hands. So doing AR stuff is something that, now it's about the artists on board with doing more things. There was I think we talked about a Coke can experience where you'd hold your phone up to a can and that would trigger an augmented reality experience and the artist would like dance and sing around the can, like do a whole music
Mm-hmm.
video, not whole but quite a long time around the can. And so that's like
Mm-hmm.
a whole new thing of somebody being able to experience it. And, you can do behind the scenes stuff with artists.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think getting creative with how, which they're used to, I feel like musicians are used to having to pivot to not stay relevant, but to engage with people in new ways. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that that's something we're going to see more of in the tech space. Coldplay did um, they went into what did they call it? Mixed studio, Microsoft Studio, and
Mm-hmm.
created a 3D character of himself and then put himself as a 3D. So it's a camera, it's motion capture, it's a mocap
Yeah.
studio that has 30 some cameras fixed. And he went in
Yeah.
there and danced around and sang and did his videos, and it captured him full
Yeah.
360. And then he put himself into his music video, digitally. So once you captured that, like, yeah, he put himself into the video, but you could take that whole thing and have somebody could go on their phone and see him in augmented reality doing the singing and the dancing that he captured, or in VR. So once you've captured
Yeah.
that collateral, you can use it in multiple different mediums.
Oh, so you can cash out pretty much several different times by selling
Totally.
different things too.
Yes, exactly. Because once you create that 3D scenario, you can put it wherever.
So let's say someone does, I want to say like render themselves, whatever, they
Yeah.
capture themselves.
Yeah.
Let's say someone captures themselves dancing,
Yeah.
then you can use that in a music video.
Hmm.
You could use that in like,
Magazine, a billboard, like poster, because I could hold the device up to the poster and then boom, then I see a 3D model of whoever dancing around on the video. So I could hold it up to the poster and they could jump out of the poster and then be standing on level ground here dancing around. So then I could have my phone up and my friend could go, look like they're dancing in or around them. And I could like take video, take images, all kinds of stuff.
and then you also did something with Maroon 5 with fan engagement too.
Yeah, that was a bit ago. That was more with what we can do now with AR. I feel like that was
Mhm.
so small. But the cool part about it was so it was augmenting their album covers. So if you could hold
Mhm.
up your device to the album cover, and they were actually showing behind the scenes. So the only time you could view this footage at all anywhere on the internet was on these album covers. And so it was like behind the scene footage of, some of their music videos and just stuff
Mhm.
having to do with the band holistically. And so that
Mhm.
part I thought was cool, where it was like you had to go engage with the album cover to get this, you know, cool footage of whatever. So that
Mhm.
was, I thought that was well done from that vantage point of like that surprise sneak peek kind of thing. But at that point, still, it was just video over an album. Um, but they were thinking out of the box early on.
Mhm. Mhm. And a couple years ago, like that kind of stuff was a big deal.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's funny. I was talking with some people. Geez, today it felt like forever ago, but they were saying this this new augmented reality technology, and I was like, no, because like it's for me, it's not new, but I really try to not to get jaded and be cognizant of the fact that it's still super new to a lot of people, um, and that it's important to try to keep that mindset.
Yeah, yeah, because you do it day in, day out, every single day. So of course. Um, what do you think demand for music is like in the AR VR world?
I think VR is picking up a lot. It's a lot more important. It's kind of like the score of a movie, you know. Um,
Mhm.
my son, actually, of all people, is the one who really got me to appreciate the gravity of the music of a movie. Not that I didn't appreciate it before, but we just had this conversation, I don't know, 5 years ago or so. And he's like, because he would always talk about the score of movies. And I'm like, you're 14, 13, 14 years old. No, nobody, you don't, that's not the thing you like latch onto. And he's like,
Yeah.
it's pivotal for a good movie, mom. And I'm like, okay, talk me through this. And so we're having this conversation, such a cool kid. We're having this conversation, and he's like, imagine a movie with zero sound, no sound except the talking, none. And so we watch a movie, and he's like, see this background music? Gone. It'd be awkward, so he's pointing it out. And he's right.
Mhm.
It's so important. And so with VR, audio is extremely relevant. You're in, and then now spatial audio is more so relevant. It takes something from feeling um like, oh, that's a cool experience, to feeling immersive and really feeling like, whoa, you're looking over here because the sound's coming from your right and something's this way, so that sound and that element of it. Also for that game with Meta, that shared game that I was talking about, we had to, because Meta hired us directly, everything in that game had to be from the ground up. Every single 3D asset. We couldn't even use an existing chair. We had to make everything new. All of the sounds, we could not license any existing sound. So our guys had to create everything from the ground up. And so the audio, there's a good chunk of budget that went to audio, because you're in your game set in Mars. Like, it needed to be cool. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, the producer that we had, did every sound in that game from the ground up. So that gave me a whole different appreciation of the audio in game. And Gravity Jack, we're getting ready to do our own game. We're actually raising right now for it. And there's a good chunk of the budget that's for audio because it's
Mhm.
relevant and it matters. It's not
Yeah.
VR, it's an AR game, so it's a little different. I do think VR is very crucial to have, you know, quality sound. It
And
takes
you
the immersion to the next level.
definitely. And like you mentioned the whole spatial audio thing, and I also read
Mm-hmm.
about that too, where like Dolby Atmos is becoming important for music producers to learn just because it was not like fundamental right now, but this was like a music future blog, and it was saying that like
Mm-hmm.
the future of music is we need to learn how to produce in like 4D surround sound
Yes.
because that's where we're headed.
Yeah.
Because yeah,
Totally
like
agree with that.
you hear something in the distance, so like you need to have that feel on like northeast of
Mm-hmm.
the listener. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's really interesting because I recently switched from Pro Tools to Ableton, and I'm like, damn it, I should have stayed with Pro Tools. Like I need to learn.
You're like, now I have to do
Like
both.
I do you find for the stuff you work on, um, are you working with mostly like surround sound, or like would AR VR projects use stereo left and right?
So it depends on what we're doing. But they
Yeah.
could, learning and training stuff is one where the audio needs to be um, similar to the real scenario, you know? So
Mhm.
if they're working on something, one of them was these big rigs. It's complicated what the experience is, not necessarily relevant. But if I'm working here at this point and the engine is over here, I need that audio, something like hissing sounds or something's going wrong. I need to know it's coming from the correct spot, right? If I hear a
Mhm.
sound over here that's at the back end of this big rig, that's super inaccurate with what's happening in the real world space I'm trying to have the user engage with. So that's
Right.
more of a learning training like environment. We did a one for fire extinguisher training in VR, and a
Mhm.
fire alarm starts going off, and then you hear a fire happening, and there's a fire that happens over here in the trash can because it's randomly generated, or it happens in the stovetop. And so
Yeah.
because if I'm looking over here, the audio comes from the location the fire's at programmatically, so that if like the sound of, that was a really bad fire sound, but I'm like, what was that? Like a keyboard, whatever a fire sound, right? But it actually like
Yeah.
it's more like that sound. You hear it from there, because when in the training environment, I need to use all my
Yeah.
whatever senses I have to find the fire. So in here it's
Yeah.
audio and it's audio and eyes, visual. Obviously, I don't have a smell in VR yet, so I couldn't smell for
Yeah.
smoke. So you have to use your eyes and your ears to find the fire. So that's another
Right.
scenario where the placement of the audio is crucial for the experience.
Right.
So
Okay,
I'd say
cool.
it's
That's good to know.
more in VR or AR with headsets. It's less because otherwise you're usually using your device for AR. So sound is
Hmm.
there, but the spatial sound of it isn't as important as it
Right, right.
is.
Because yeah, when people are listening from their phones, it's really in mono also. Like no one's
Yeah,
really listening in stereo. It doesn't really matter.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you could if you had headphones in, but then it's like that's not everybody's gonna have their headphones in when they engage with the experience, so it's just
Yeah.
different.
And do you have advice for musicians that want to get their music into VR? Or yeah, the AR? Because like in sync licensing right now for people that want to get their music in like film and TV, or commercials, you like contact a music supervisor who's kind of the middleman in that
Hmm.
industry. But if people want to work with, AR, VR games or experiences, who do you even contact?
I would contact developers. So it would be
Okay.
VR developers. And so even someone, you know, publishers too, so game publishers. Because if you reached out to them that you essentially are wanting to be a subcontractor for audio for the experiences,
Mhm.
so it'd be getting in touch with those groups. That's probably the angle I would go first and foremost. Because like here at GJ, we don't have an audio team full time. So we end up
Mhm.
subcontracting out to a very small pool of audio engineers, sound audio engineers that we've worked with in the past. So that would be a
Mhm.
scenario like that where we'd pull in a subcontractor to work on that.
Cool. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up the pod?
Keep evangelizing. I mean, it's people like you with the interest, the desire, and the capabilities that like spread that news. Even educating people in the music and sound industry of like, hey, this is an area your passion and experience is super valuable for. So continuing to just like we evangelize on our side for the tech, and just having you evangelize, in your circles and spheres too. And I think that's how the best things can get created.
Also, where can people find you?
gravityjack.com is our home site. And then we're actually on Start Engine right now doing a public offering. So if you go to startengine.com, search Gravity Jack, you'll see us there as well. And then we're on all the socials. So find us there.
Cool. And thanks everybody for listening. Don't forget to follow Selling the Soundtrack on socials. But yeah, like, comment, subscribe, share. Thanks, guys. Bye.